One of the things that I have the highest conviction over now as a scientist is the concept of grace in biology. I grew up in kind of a Christian environment, and kind of hippie church in Boulder, and great people around. And so I had kind of the lexicon of kind of a relatively open-minded church doctrine. And the word grace got thrown around in this faith community all the time. And now I'm exposed to a lot of people from all types of spiritual backgrounds, and you go into the Muslim or the Buddhist or the Jewish communities, and you hear this word grace with differing frequency, but it's out there in our lexicon. I think it can maybe best be defined now, in my mind at least, scientifically, which is heal faster than you injure. And that's what we see in the soil, and that's what I get to see in my clinic. I see people who have abused their bodies for decades, and if they just give a pause, they do a couple of short-term fasts, they give their gut a break, they give their immune system a break, they get away from chemicals, they start growing some of their own food, they make these simple little decisions, and suddenly decades of damage is reversed in hours, weeks, months. That's grace at the cellular level, and there may be a better spiritual definition of it, but from a biology standpoint, I see grace as you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to heal faster from them when you make the change. And that's what we see in the soil. And so these farmers who are making the jump, again, we've seen 1 million acres make this transition. And so Soil Health Academy is our partners in this group, and they're 4 phenomenal farmers who really have been cutting the edge of this no-till, no-spray effort. And what we're seeing is that within a single growing season, you can go from this dead monoculture of corn or soybean to cover cropping with 16 different species and getting a no-till environment. You'll see the fungal elements, you'll see the mycorrhizae in there, the bacterial populations returning to the soil, and you see biodiversity returning in the form of earthworms within a single growing season of rest.
Yeah, it's the environmental planetary version of what you just explained in the human body.
It's fasting.
Right? Yeah.
Fast for just a moment. Stop doing the damage for just a short period of time.
The resiliency is amazing.
It's amazing. And it would have to be. There's a book recently out, and I'm going to screw up the title. I think it's something like Earth Without Humans or something like this. And it describes how fast the ecosystem is going to recover when we disappear.
We're gone. Yeah.
It describes New York City 2 weeks without humans, and you see every element of the concrete infrastructure of Manhattan disappearing under biology. And within 2 months and 2 years, and you see how fast life leaps out of this planet. And it has to be that way because it's Mother Earth. That's how we got here. This planet's been exploding with life for millions and millions of years before Homo sapiens showed up.
But we got to combat this problem. I mean, one of the things that we talked about last time that was so shocking for me to hear was just the pervasiveness of chemical spraying. So even if you are an organic farmer, or you are a consumer buying organic, or you're trying to live in a clean environment, that glyphosate and various other chemicals are so pervasive they found their way into our drinking water. It's in the rainwater. It's raining down onto these organic farms. So despite trying to hermetically remove ourselves from this problem, it's still something that we have to contend with, even when we're doing everything in our power to avoid it.
I mean, first of all, why is that? Why is glyphosate everywhere? It's the nature of the molecule itself. It's an amino acid backbone with a phosphate group and a carbon group on the other end, and you get this thing called an organophosphate. And organophosphates in this form are extremely water soluble. 70% of Earth is water, and it turns out that 70% of your body is water. And so we've put into play a chemical that is water soluble that can now travel through all levels of the water ecosystem. And so in the evaporating water coming off the Mississippi River, as we collect some 80% of all of the Roundup sprayed in our country into a single water system, through the runoff that happens when we water or when the rain falls or whatever it is, we consolidate that into the Great Muddy. It shouldn't be muddy, but it's carrying all of our topsoil in it now because all of our topsoil is dead and is eroding away. An amazing estimate on that, actually. I just read that 11% of our GDP is being wasted every year in topsoil the amount of monetary loss from our topsoil washing away is equal to 11% of GDP.
Because it's so unhealthy that it doesn't adhere?
Exactly. Yeah, there's no root structure to keep it there. There's no mycorrhizae, there's no mycelium, there's no fungal structure in the soil to keep the topsoil where it needs to be. And so every time it rains, the rain can't even penetrate the soil, which is ridiculous. It's so hard that the water, when it finally rains on your crop, can't get into the soil. Instead, it takes the top centimeter of your soil away and washes it to the nearest gully and out into the water system, which of course ends up in the Mississippi River and then into the Delta. And at the end of the Mississippi River, we now have a dead zone that's larger than the state of Rhode Island because there's so much herbicide, pesticide, and chemical fertilizer in that water. And so we've got this huge dead zone in the ocean right at the mouth of the Mississippi, and not a single politician is talking about that. It's unbelievable. It's dumbfounding that we can be this myopic. So soil's disappearing. All of this is broken. Yes, 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 yes. But I still want to bring it back to the simple reality is the brokenness in the system has to do with the isolation of human relationship. If we connect the farmer back to the consumer, and we cut out the banks, we cut out the farm bill, we cut out the big chemical industry that's trying to educate them incorrectly, we have cut out all those players, the amount of money we save is extraordinary, first of all. But the amount of money we can bring into those lands is extraordinary. So there's such a huge economic incentive right now for farmers to make this jump. They just need support for about 3 years to make the transition. Because after 3 to 5 years, they can take crop yields. Right now, if they're under GMO crop, they can expect to yield maybe $40 an acre after they subtract out all of their inputs and everything else. So typical family farm, you're growing maybe 300 acres of corn, soybean, some mix thereof. 300 acres times your $40, you're at a dismal annual income. And to achieve that, you've woken up every morning at 4 a.m., you go to sleep at 10 p.m., you cry yourself to sleep every night, your relationship with your wife is so stressed because she's yelling that change has to happen because the kids are sick, she doesn't have money to pay the health bills, can't fill the pharmacy prescriptions, Dad's chomping at you because you must be doing something wrong, so it's not working, you need to change. And for that, you get your dismal return at the end of the year.
Which goes to just service the debt.
Services the debt.
Right.
And so then you have to borrow money to buy the seed, to buy the fertilizers for your next crop. And you're back in the cycle again. And so this is the reality for so many of these farms. And, I just have to be amazed at the economic incentive on the other side of this. Is these farms, these over 1 million acres that have made the transition back to regen ag over the last 15 years, these guys are seeing returns per acre of $500 to $900 an acre.
From $40.
From $40.
Oh my God.
And so we want to believe that there's some impossible way. It's too hard to get money for organic food. No, it's so much more lucrative for these farmers.
Wow.
They could be the most lucrative generation of farmers in their entire family if they can get to a regen ag practice.
And what you said earlier is that to make that transition costs about $100 per acre in order to kind of help these people make that switch.
Yeah, and that $100, it doesn't even need to go to being a safety net income entirely. So a third of it we see going to their education. A third of it we see going to consumer education. And then a third of it we see becoming a safety net income for them, where they're not going to get paid, but we say, if you were to fail, because that's their fear. If I don't do what I've been doing the last 15 or 20 years of chemicals, my crop next year is going to fail and I'm going to go bankrupt. And so we don't even need to give them an income necessarily, but what we can say is, look, we've now raised enough private funds for you that we can give you a safety net that says, if you're actively in this transition of no spray, no till, and you happen to fail one of those years, we'll meet you at $40 an acre.
Right.
We'll meet you there. You will not go down in income. That's what we need to do, is create that safety net.
Right.
That safety net, I don't think is even going to have to be tapped into, because the farmers that are making the transition are already seeing improved yields year one of going back to a non-GMO seed.